All right, so I want to start today with two facts from the research stack that, quite honestly, they just stopped me on my tracks. They feel like they belong in two completely different universes, but as we're going to find out, they're actually pointing to the exact same problem.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So fact number one, it comes from this massive study. We're talking 30,000 women followed for over 20 years.
Wow, that's a serious cohort.
It is. And it suggests that avoiding sunlight might carry a mortality risk that is statistically comparable to smoking cigarettes.
It's a staggering statistic, isn't it? It sounds almost hyperbolic, almost irresponsible to even say, given everything we've been told about skin cancer.
Exactly.
But the data is there, and it just completely flips the script on what we've been taught for, what, the last 40 years?
It really does. Okay, so hold that thought. Now, for fact number two, this one is, well, it's terrifying in a completely different way. There's this story in the notes about a successful business owner. Smart guy, high functioning, but he was so addicted to bread that his health was just collapsing.
Right.
His wife, in this desperate attempt to stop him, she threw the bread in the trash and then actually sprayed the crusts with bleach.
No.
And he still dug them out and ate them.
Wow. That is the visceral reality of metabolic addiction. It's not just, cravings or a lack of willpower. That story shows you it's a physiological hijacking of the brain's most primitive survival mechanisms.
Exactly. And that is where we are going today. We're looking at a sort of grand unified theory of longevity.
I like that.
We have this massive stack of sources, neuroscientists like Dr. Wendy Suzuki. We've got metabolic experts like Dr. David Unwin, functional dentists, even oncologists who are reevaluating hormone therapy.
It's a really diverse group of experts.
It is. And the mission today is to merge metabolic health, which is, the body's engine, with neurological health, the operating system. Because what all these sources are showing us again and again is that you just cannot treat them separately.
That's the key flaw in so much of modern medicine, isn't it? We tend to compartmentalize everything.
Right. You have a brain doctor, a heart doctor,
a gut doctor. But the biological mechanisms, things like inflammation, mitochondrial function, hormonal signaling, they are the common threads weaving through every single one of those systems.
So if your engine is misfiring,
your operating system is going to crash. It's that simple. You can't hack your brain if your body is on fire with inflammation.
So we've got some protocols to get through today that seem completely counterintuitive at first glance. Eat more protein than we thought was safe, get more sun, tape your mouth shut at night.
Yeah, that last one always gets a reaction.
I have to be honest, when I first read tape your mouth,
yeah,
I thought, okay, we've officially veered into pseudoscience here.
It sounds wild, I know. But we're going to explain the why behind all of them. Why does light actually matter to your blood sugar? Why does building muscle act as a natural antidepressant? We aren't just listing hacks. We're really digging into the biological mechanism.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this. I think we have to start with the environment, light and air. Because usually when we talk health, we jump straight to diet and exercise. But this research suggests we're ignoring the most fundamental inputs of all.
Absolutely. And let's go right back to that sunlight study you mentioned in the intro. This comes from Jonathan Jarecki and the Southern Sweden cohort study.
And this is the one that compared the sun seekers to the sun avoiders, right?
Correct. So they followed nearly 30,000 women for 2 full decades. And the data was it was unambiguous. The women who got the most sun exposure lived twice as long as those who actively avoided the sun.
Wait, say that again? Twice as long. That can't be right. That seems like a statistical anomaly.
It sounds like one, but it holds up. And here is the kicker that really drives it home. When they crunched the numbers, they found that non-smokers who avoided the sun had the exact same life expectancy as smokers who got lots of sun.
So you're saying avoiding the sun carried a mortality risk that was basically the same as smoking.
That's what the data suggests. It's a heavy statement, I know. We spend so much time and money slathering on sunscreen, staying in the shade, because we're terrified of skin cancer.
And rightly so in many cases.
Of course. But the question this study raises is, are we trading one risk for a much, much bigger one?
That's a huge question. So what's the mechanism? Why is the sun so protective?
Well, and this is the key thing. It's not just about vitamin D. That's the common assumption. Oh, I'll just take a supplement and I can stay inside.
Right.
But sunlight does something a pill can't. It aligns your circadian rhythms. It's the master signal that sets your body clock, which regulates sleep, hormones, everything. But it goes even deeper. It directly stimulates your mitochondria.
The power plants of the cell.
Exactly. Sunlight, specifically near-infrared light from the sun, triggers the production of something called subcellular melatonin.
Wait a minute. I thought melatonin was the sleep hormone made in your brain.
That's pineal melatonin, yes, and that goes into your bloodstream to help you sleep. But your cells, specifically the mitochondria, they produce their own private supply of melatonin when they get hit with that light.
And this melatonin doesn't make you sleepy.
Not at all. It acts as a potent, localized antioxidant. It's there to clean up the exhaust fumes, the free radicals that get created when your cells make energy.
So if you stay inside all day, your cells are essentially running dirty. They're getting clogged up with their own pollution.
Precisely. They're missing their localized antioxidant cleaning crew. And we're even seeing new research on specific wavelengths of light. There's a researcher, Dr. Glenn Jeffrey at UCL, who did a fascinating study with red light, specifically 670 nanometers.
Okay, this is the red light therapy stuff we're seeing everywhere now. People standing in front of these glowing red panels.
It is, but look at this specific effect he found. He shined this red light on subjects' backs for just 15 minutes.
Okay.
Then he gave them a big dose of glucose. Basically, he engineered a sugar spike. And he found that their blood glucose spikes were reduced by about 27.7%.
Hold on. Just from shining a light on their back, they weren't exercising, they weren't taking insulin.
Nope. The light alone helped their body process sugar better. Because the light improves mitochondrial efficiency. If your mitochondria are working better, they can burn fuel, in this case, glucose, more effectively and more quickly. It's a perfect example of how an environmental input, something as simple as light, directly changes your metabolic state.
So the protocol here isn't just go outside whenever. It seems more strategic. The sources talk about getting 10 to 30 minutes of unfiltered morning sunlight.
Right.
Maybe eating lunch outdoors, catching the sunset.
Exactly. It's about signaling. You're telling your body what time it is, and you're revving up the cellular engine for the day ahead.
Okay, so that's light, a huge paradigm shift. Now let's talk about air, or maybe more specifically, oxygen, because there's this concept in the stack called inflammaging.
Inflammaging. It's exactly what it sounds like, the process of aging being accelerated by chronic low-grade inflammation. And a major driver of this is oxygen deprivation at the cellular level.
This comes from the work of Brad Pitzel and Dr. Robert Lefkin.
That's right. And the stat they cite is pretty alarming. By the time you're 50, you've lost about 25% of your oxygen utilization capability.
So even if I'm breathing normally, my cells could actually be starving for oxygen.
Precisely. The delivery system itself degrades over time. The microvessels, those tiny capillaries, they start to clamp down, the mitochondria get sluggish, and when a cell is starved of oxygen, what does it do? It sends out panic signals.
Inflammation.
Inflammation. It's a constant low-grade distress call happening all over your body.
So this is where the protocol comes in. EWO, exercise with oxygen therapy. Now, is this just sitting in a hyperbaric chamber? Because I've seen those.
No, and that's a really important distinction. Hyperbaric is passive pressure. EWO is active. You get on a piece of exercise equipment, say a stationary bike, for about 15 minutes. But while you're doing it, you're wearing a mask that's feeding you near pure oxygen.
So you're forcing oxygen into the system right when the heart is pumping and the blood is moving.
You're doing more than that. You're super saturating the blood plasma itself because your heart rate is up, your blood is moving fast. You're driving that oxygen-rich blood into tissues that normally don't get enough. You're opening up those clamped down capillaries. It's like taking a pressure washer to your entire vascular system.
Wow. And the story from Brad Pitzel himself is pretty crazy, right? His personal experience with this.
It's incredible. He was suffering from severe autoimmune arthritis and even melanoma. He was in a really bad way. After starting this E-Peruti protocol, his inflammatory markers just plummeted.
That's amazing.
But the real proof was in his performance. He went for a bioenergy test. It's a type of stress test designed to completely exhaust you in about 8 minutes. That's the target for a healthy person.
And how long do you last?
22 minutes.
22.
The technician stopped the test and asked him if he was a professional endurance athlete. He wasn't. He was just oxygenated. For the first time in years, his cells were finally getting all the fuel they needed to perform.
That is just incredible. And the notes mention a kind of synergy here, combining EDELO with the red light therapy we just talked about.
Yes, this is the ultimate longevity stack. The idea is you do your 15 minutes of EDELO to flood the body with oxygen. Then you immediately follow it up with red light therapy.
Why in that order?
Because the light signals the mitochondria to absorb all that extra oxygen you just delivered and turn it into ATP, which is cellular energy. It's like putting high-octane fuel in your car and then tuning the engine to burn it perfectly.
I see. But we can't walk around with oxygen masks all day. What about the other 23 hours? What about when we're sleeping?
Mm-hmm.
This brings us to mouth taping. I have to admit, seeing this in the notes made me so skeptical. It feels very, I don't know, like an internet fad.
I get that completely. It sounds barbaric, doesn't it? But the work from people like Dr. Stacy Whitman and Dr. Rupi Oddsla, it's backed by a lot of data. The key stat is that up to 90% of people may have dysregulated breathing patterns.
90%. That can't be right.
It sounds high, but think about it. Most of us are breathing too shallowly from our chest or through our mouths, especially at night when we lose muscle tone in the jaw.
And the fix is to literally put tape over your mouth.
It's very gentle. You use a specialized porous tape or even just a small piece of surgical micropore tape. The goal isn't to seal your lips shut. It's just to gently encourage them to stay closed, forcing you to breathe through your nose.
Why is the nose so much better? I mean, air is air, right?
Mechanically, yes, but biologically, absolutely not. The nose is an amazing piece of technology. It filters and humidifies the air, but crucially, your nasal passages produce nitric oxide.
And what does that do?
Nitric oxide is a potent vasodilator. It opens up your blood vessels and your airways. So when you breathe through your nose, you increase your body's oxygenation efficiency by about 20%.
20% more oxygen just by closing your mouth. So if you're a mouth breather at night.
You're chronically depriving yourself of oxygen all night long. You're putting your body into a low-grade stress state, which spikes cortisol and wrecks your sleep quality.
Dr. Whitman had a personal story with this, didn't she?
She did. She had a severe bike accident as a kid that caused some facial trauma, messed up her jaw. She physically struggles to keep her mouth closed at night. She found that without tape, she snores terribly and wakes up feeling completely exhausted.
And she's tracked this.
Oh yeah, she tracks it with her Oura Ring and Whoop Band. The data is clear. Significantly better REM and deep sleep scores on the night she tapes. It's a simple mechanical fix that changes your entire physiological state while you sleep.
Okay. Light and air. The absolute basics, but we're getting them wrong. Let's move on to the engine itself, the metabolic engine. And this is all about fuel and muscle. And we have to go back to that story, the bleach on the bread.
Dr. David Unwin's story. It's so powerful because it just perfectly illustrates that metabolic disease isn't a moral failure. It's not about willpower. It's biochemistry.
Dr. Unwin is a GP in the UK, right?
Yeah.
And he's had this massive success putting type 2 diabetes into remission with his patients.
Huge success. He starts with a very, very low-carb approach. He advocates cutting out starchy carbs, bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, and getting down to about 40 grams a day.
40 grams? I mean, the average person probably eats 300 grams a day without even thinking about it.
Oh, easily. But for someone with insulin resistance, that high-carb diet is like pouring gasoline on a fire. Dr. Unwin actually reversed his own prediabetes and high blood pressure doing this. He went from 300 grams of carbs a day down to 40.
And he feels better?
He says now, at 67, he can outsprint his grandkids.
That's amazing. And he had a patient, I think he's called Dan in the notes, who had an HbA1c of 96. For context, what is a normal, healthy number?
A normal number is below 42, so 96 it's dangerously, catastrophically high.
And what did Dan do?
He just used a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, to see what foods were spiking his blood sugar. And it was the things he thought were healthy. Bread, even wholemeal bread, and his breakfast cereals. By just cutting those out, he achieved drug-free remission.
It's just amazing that we're still told that whole grains should be the foundation of a healthy diet. Yet for these people, for a huge portion of the population, they are basically poison.
It's the carbohydrate trap.
Wow.
If you are insulin resistant, your body simply cannot process that fuel correctly. It just gets turned into sugar, stored as fat, and drives inflammation. And that brings us back to the addiction component. That poor guy who ate the bleached bread, that's a dopamine response. His brain's reward system was screaming for that hit of glucose.
The brain signals survival, even when the rational mind knows it's pure destruction.
Exactly.
So cutting the carbs is step one. But step two in this metabolic reset seems to be about what we are building, and that's muscle.
Yes, this is a massive paradigm shift in how we should think about health. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Dr. Mark Hyman, Vanessa Spina, they are all shouting this from the rooftops. Muscle is not just for looking good. It is the organ of longevity.
Dr. Gabrielle Lyon calls it an endocrine organ.
Because it is. It's a gland. When you contract your skeletal muscle, when you lift something heavy, it releases hundreds of signaling molecules into your bloodstream called myokines.
And scientists have started calling these hope molecules. I love that term.
It's a great term, hope molecules. It's poetic, but it's also biologically spot on.
What do they actually do?
Well, these myokines travel all over the body. They go to your brain and act as natural antidepressants. They travel to your liver and pancreas to help regulate your metabolism and improve insulin sensitivity. Muscle is your metabolic sink. It's where you dispose of excess glucose. It is your metabolic armor.
And Dr. Mark Hyman, a big name in this space, he had a bit of a scare with this himself recently, didn't he?
He did. You know, he's the picture of functional medicine, but after a back surgery at age 65, he was laid up and he lost 25 pounds of muscle.
Wow.
He said he became frail. And he had this realization that all the green juice and yoga and meditation in the world wasn't going to fix that. He had to pivot his entire focus.
And what was his protocol to rebuild?
It was simple. Heavy on the protein and heavy on the weights. He started having a breakfast shake with 50 grams of whey protein, creatine, and another compound called urolithin A. And he started lifting heavy things again. He rebuilt that essential tissue.
The recommendation in our notes is pretty high. It's 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. That is a lot more than most people, especially women, are told to eat.
It is. But if you want to stave off sarcopenia, which is that age-related loss of muscle that leads to frailty and metabolic decline, you need the building blocks. Those amino acids are non-negotiable.
Okay, so we can't talk about weight and metabolism in today's world without talking about the elephant in the room, the GLP-1 agonists.
Ozempic, Wegovy.
Everyone is on them or knows someone who is.
And this is where a crucial warning comes in from Dr. Tyna. She talks about the risk of creating metabolic brittleness.
What does that actually mean, metabolic brittleness?
So these drugs are incredibly effective at killing your appetite. You just don't feel hungry, so you eat less. But if you're not intentional, you stop eating enough protein. And because you have low energy from the calorie deficit, you stop moving as much.
So you lose weight, but what kind of weight are you losing?
Exactly. You lose a significant portion of that weight as precious muscle tissue. You become, as they say, skinny fat.
But it's worse than that, isn't it?
It's much worse. You become metabolically fragile because your muscle is your metabolic engine. If you shrink the engine, your resting metabolism slows down to a crawl. So when you eventually stop the drug, and the data shows most people do, the weight comes roaring back.
How fast?
One study showed a regain rate of 0.8 kilograms per month, almost 2 pounds a month. And since you lost your muscle, the metabolic sink, you're regaining it all as fat.
So you end up fatter and metabolically weaker than when you started.
Precisely. Dr. Moore's point is non-negotiable. If you choose to use these drugs, you must strength train and you must hit your protein targets. It is mandatory for a good outcome.
Are there any natural alternatives mentioned for people who don't want to go the pharmaceutical route?
There are. The sources mention a compound called calocurb, which is a specific hops extract from New Zealand. It stimulates your body's natural production of GLP-1, along with other satiety hormones like CCK and PYY.
So it's sort of nudging your own system to do the job, rather than shutting it down with an external drug.
That's a great way to put it. It works with your biology. It doesn't seem to cause the L cells in your gut to atrophy, which is a potential long-term concern with the synthetic drugs.
And one last little insight on fat before we move on. Sean Stevenson's point about belly fat. He calls it a magnet for stress.
This is such a fascinating point. It explains why stress eating goes right to the waistline. Visceral fat, that dangerous fat around your organs, has 4 times more cortisol receptors than the subcutaneous fat under your skin.
So when you're stressed and your cortisol is high, your body is literally getting a biological signal to store fat right there in your middle to protect your organs.
It's a primitive survival mechanism gone wrong in the modern world.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered the environment, light, and air. We've covered the engine, fuel, and muscle. Now let's look at the chemicals running the show. Section 3. Chemical regulation, hormones, and neurotransmitters.
And this is where things get, shall we say, controversial, specifically regarding hormone replacement therapy, or HRT for women.
Yeah, for the longest time, the dominant narrative has been estrogen causes cancer. Full stop.
That fear stems almost entirely from one study, the Women's Health Initiative, or WHI, from the early 2000s, and experts like Dr. Lindsay Berkson, Dr. Julie Taguchi, and Dr. Sanjay Bajraj are pointing to a massive, necessary reevaluation of that data.
What was wrong with the original study?
A few things. For one, they used synthetic forms of hormones, not the bioidentical ones used today, and they gave them to women who were, on average, much older and already in poor health, sometimes a decade or more past menopause.
So it wasn't a clean study. What does the new analysis of that same data show?
This is the shocking part. When they look specifically at the estrogen alone arm of the study, those women actually had 25% less breast cancer than the women taking the placebo.
Wait, 25% less. That is the complete opposite of what the headlines told us for 20 years.
The complete and total opposite. And it's not just that study. A more recent massive study of 7 million Medicare patients found that women on HRT for 5 or more years had a 33% decreased incidence of breast, uterine, and colorectal cancers.
So it's not just not causing cancer, it might actually be protective.
Estrogen is a growth factor, yes, but it's also a crucial immune modulator. But even more importantly, Dr. Bojraj calls estrogen a protective blanket for the cardiovascular system.
Right, because heart disease is the #1 killer of women, not cancer.
By a long shot. And the risk for heart disease skyrockets after menopause when estrogen levels plummet. The arteries get stiffer, blood pressure goes up, inflammation goes up. So thinking about HRT isn't just about managing hot flashes. It's about preserving your brain, your bones, and especially your heart for the long run.
If someone listening wants to get a better handle on their heart health, Dr. Bojraj suggests some specific labs to ask for, right? Not just the standard cholesterol panel.
Correct. The standard LDL number is okay, but he strongly recommends getting your ApoB tested. That's apolipoprotein B.
And why is ApoB a better marker?
Think of it this way. LDL cholesterol is like the passengers inside a car, and ApoB is the car itself. The standard test just counts the passengers. But it's the number of cars on the road that actually causes the traffic jam, the plaque buildup in your arteries. ApoB counts the cars.
That's a great analogy.
It's a much more accurate predictor of cardiovascular risk. He also says to check your LPA and, crucially, your fasting insulin. Those 3 numbers tell you the real story of your metabolic and cardiovascular health.
Okay, let's switch from hormones to neurotransmitters.
Oh.
Dopamine.
Yeah.
The motivation molecule.
Or the addiction molecule, depending on how you use it. This is where Lucas Yoon brings a really smart perspective. We live in a world where we are just constantly flooding our brains with cheap dopamine. Our phones, sugar, endless news cycles.
And the result is always the crash.
It's the crash, but it's also downregulation. Your brain is smart. It says, whoa, this is way too much loud noise. And to protect itself, it literally removes the dopamine receptors. It pulls them offline. So now you need more and more stimulation just to feel normal.
And that's the definition of tolerance and addiction.
That's it. So the strategy isn't get more dopamine. It's make your receptors more sensitive. You want to upregulate them.
And Lucas mentions an herbal hack for this. Thunbergia laurifolia.
Also known as trumpet vine. Sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
It does. What is it?
It's an herb from Thailand. And the research suggests that it can trigger a release of dopamine in the nucleus accumbens, the brain's pleasure and reward center, in a way that's similar to amphetamines, but without the addiction profile or the neurotoxicity. It's a cleaner way to get that feeling of drive and motivation without burning out the hardware.
Speaking of drive and focus, we have to talk about nicotine. And I can feel people tensing up already because we all just think cigarettes. Are we really suggesting nicotine is a longevity tool?
We have to be so careful here to separate the molecule from the delivery system. Dave Asprey is a big proponent of this. Smoking is terrible. Vaping is bad for your lungs. Full stop. But nicotine, the molecule itself, it's a powerful nootropic.
How does it work? It mimics acetylcholine, right?
Yes, exactly. Acetylcholine is the primary neurotransmitter for learning, memory, and focus. Nicotine fits into that same receptor. It also helps upregulate NAD, which is crucial for brain energy metabolism.
The notes mention RFK Jr. using nicotine patches during his long congressional hearings to stay sharp.
It's becoming a sort of open secret for cognitive performance in high-stakes environments. The key is the delivery system. Gums, pouches, lozenges, or patches. A low, steady dose. You get the cognitive boost without the thousands of carcinogens from tar and combustion.
But obviously people need to proceed with caution. It is still an addictive substance.
It is absolutely habit-forming, yes. But the health risks are vastly, vastly different when you take the smoke in the lungs out of the equation. It facilitates connection between neurons. It doesn't destroy lung tissue.
Before we leave this chemical section, there's a quick but pretty gross warning from Ben Katz, a mass spec scientist. He analyzes what's actually in our food and supplements.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing stuff. He analyzed meat from a popular fast food chain and found high levels of putrescine.
Putrescine, as in putrid.
That's where the name comes from. It's a compound that's formed during the decay of amino acids found in rotting flesh. Now, to be fair, it occurs naturally in very small amounts in some aged foods like Parmesan cheese, but finding it in fast food meat suggests, well, It suggests a certain lack of freshness in the supply chain.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
And he also flagged Marilax, the laxative.
Yeah. He notes that it's essentially PEG 3500, which is polyethylene glycol. It's a microplastic. And sucralose, or Splenda, contains chlorine molecules that are bonded in a way the human body just can't process. His overall point is simple. We are ingesting a ton of industrial chemicals that our biology has no framework to deal with.
So clean up the diet. Avoid the fake stuff. Got it. Wait, let's move upstairs. Section 4. The neurological and psychological layer. Because you can have the most perfectly tuned body, but if your mind is broken, none of it matters.
And maybe paradoxically, the best thing you can do for your mind turns out to be moving your body. Dr. Wendy Suzuki is the world's leading expert on this. She calls aerobic exercise a bubble bath of wonderful neurochemicals for your brain.
I love that image. What chemicals are we talking about in this bubble bath?
When you do 30 to 45 minutes of cardio that gets your heart rate up, you are flooding your brain with dopamine, serotonin, and most importantly, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
And BDNF is like Miracle-Gro for your neurons.
It is exactly like Miracle-Gro. It encourages the growth of new brain cells and strengthens the connections between them, particularly in the hippocampus.
The memory center.
The memory center. And this isn't just a theory. A huge longitudinal study of Swedish women showed that those with high cardiovascular fitness in their midlife delayed the onset of dementia by an average of 9 years compared to the low-fit women.
9 years. I mean, just stop and think about that. That is nearly a decade of life, of memories, of lucidity, saved just by being fit.
It's a massive effect size, and Dr. Suzuki lived this herself. She tells this story about how she was going for tenure as a professor. She was stressed out, working all the time. She gained weight. She felt miserable and isolated. She went on a rafting trip and had this awful realization that she was the weakest person there.
And that was her wake-up call.
It was. She started going to the gym, exercising regularly, and she found that it drastically impacted her work. Her grant writing improved, her focus was better, her ideas were clearer. She realized the exercise wasn't taking time away from her work, it was what was fueling her ability to work at a high level.
So for those of us who feel stressed out of our minds, let's talk about a specific nerve. The vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve. It's the superhighway of your parasympathetic nervous system. It controls the switch between fight or flight, the sympathetic state, and rest and digest, the parasympathetic state.
And the work of J.P. Errico and Dr. Navaz Habib suggests we need to be manually flipping that switch a lot more often.
Because modern life keeps us stuck in fight or flight. The notifications, the deadlines, the traffic, we never get a chance to come down. The methods to activate the vagus nerve are actually pretty simple. Electrical stimulation, deep diaphragmatic breathing, or even just humming.
Humming? How does making a noise help my nervous system?
It's purely mechanical. Humming vibrates your vocal cords. The vagus nerve runs right past your vocal cords in your neck. That physical vibration mechanically stimulates the nerve, which sends a signal to your brain to calm everything down.
And does this have any real-world performance benefits?
The military certainly thinks so. A study at the Defense Language Institute, where they train spies, found that using transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulation, a little device that clips to your ear, helped people learn a new foreign language 40% faster.
40% faster, just by calming down their nervous system.
It puts the brain into a more receptive, more plastic state. It lowers the stress barrier to learning. When you aren't in a state of threat, you can absorb new information much more easily.
And there's a dietary tip here too, something about runny egg yolks.
Yes, for choline. Your body needs choline to produce acetylcholine, that learning neurotransmitter we talked about with nicotine. The vagus nerve uses acetylcholine as its primary signaling molecule. So runny egg yolks are a fantastic source. Eat your yolks.
Okay, let's get into the pure psychology, psychological distancing. This comes from Dr. Mayo Shankar and Mel Robbins.
This is such a powerful resilience hack. When we're in a crisis, we get completely enmeshed in it. The self-talk is, I'm a failure, I can't do this. Dr. Shankar suggests using third-person self-talk.
So instead of saying, I need to get a grip, I would literally say aloud, host needs to get a grip.
Exactly. It sounds incredibly silly, but it works because it forces your brain to zoom out. You stop being the main character drowning in the tragedy and you become the narrator observing it. It creates just enough emotional distance for you to start problem solving.
And Maya Shankar used this herself in some really tough times, right?
She did. She was a violin prodigy at Juilliard and suffered a career-ending hand injury. Her entire identity was crushed.
Yeah.
Then, later in life, she had multiple devastating miscarriages. She used this distancing technique to remind herself that her identity wasn't just violinist or mother. She would list her other identities: friend, mentor, scientist, podcaster. It helped her survive the grief without being completely consumed by it.
And Mel Robbins has a very practical, almost funny tip on boundaries that involves peeing.
The pause. Her observation is that many of us are such chronic people pleasers that we ignore our most basic biological needs. We won't even excuse ourselves from a meeting to use the restroom because we don't want to seem rude or interrupt the flow.
I think we've all been there, holding it for an hour.
Absolutely. And her point is simple but profound. If you can't even set a boundary to go pee, how in the world are you going to set a big, important boundary? Like saying no to taking on a huge project at work or ending a toxic relationship. You have to start small. Honor your biology first.
Section 5. This is the last big one. Designing the environment and relationships. This is where the rubber really meets the road. Because you can know all this stuff, but if your daily environment is actively fighting you, you're probably going to lose.
Jay Shetty and Sohi Carpenter hit this point hard. The stat they cite is that your surroundings drive 45% of your behavior.
Almost half of everything you do.
So if you're just relying on willpower, you're fighting a losing battle from the start. You have to rig the game in your favor. You have to design for laziness.
What does that mean in practical terms?
It just means make the bad habit hard and the good habit easy. One woman in the sources fixed her chronic insomnia simply by moving her phone charging station out of the bedroom. That's it. No more late-night doom scrolling. A famous hospital study showed that just moving water bottles to eye level in the cafeteria dramatically increased water consumption.
So it's about friction. Hide the cookies in an opaque jar on the top shelf. Put your vitamins in your water bottle right on the counter where you'll see them.
Exactly. You're manipulating your future self to do the right thing without even thinking about it.
And what about the people in our environment? Adam Lane Smith talks about attachment styles and energy levels.
This is a profound concept. He says that humans, without a sense of co-regulation or secure attachment to others, run at only about 30% of their full capacity.
30%.
We are herd animals. We need to feel safe and connected with others to fully power up our nervous systems. We're just leaking energy all day long in a state of low-grade anxiety otherwise.
And he notes a general gender difference here, too.
Generally speaking, yes. He says men tend to get a neurochemical boost from vasopressin, which is released during shared problem solving. We are in this together, tackling this challenge. Women, on the other hand, tend to get a boost from oxytocin, which is more about safety, connection, and being heard.
And this leads to his 90-day rule for new relationships.
Yes. No physical intimacy for the first 90 days.
That feels incredibly old school. Is that even realistic in the modern dating world?
It's certainly difficult, but the logic behind it is purely biological. Physical intimacy floods the brain with oxytocin. Oxytocin is a powerful bonding hormone. It literally makes you trust the other person more and overlook their flaws.
So you get drunk on oxytocin.
You get drunk on oxytocin.
Yeah.
And you will miss the red flags. You won't see that they're unreliable or disrespectful because you are chemically bonded to them. His advice is to give it 90 days to see their true character before you bond your biology.
That actually makes a ton of sense. It's a protection mechanism.
Yeah.
And finally, a really interesting tip from Neil Horan from the band One Direction.
The very same. He was on the Whoop podcast talking about creative longevity, and his big habit is that he keeps 15,000 voice notes on his phone.
15,000.
His motto is action inspires information. He captures every single burst of creativity, a melody, a lyric, an idea instantly. It's about respecting the muse. If you don't capture the idea when it arrives, it's gone forever. It's a form of mental hygiene. Don't clog your brain trying to remember it. Just record it and move on.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. I mean, from sunlight to bleach on bread, from mouth tape to 15,000 voice notes.
It feels like a lot of disconnected ideas, but if you step back and look at it, there's a very, very clear pattern emerging.
Okay, synthesis time. What is the pattern?
The pattern is that we are finally starting to treat the human body like the high-performance biological machine it is. And that machine requires very specific inputs to run correctly. For the last 50 years, we thought the only inputs that mattered were calories and steps.
Very simplistic view.
Incredibly simplistic.
Yeah.
But now we know the machine needs the right frequency and timing of light. It needs a high saturation of oxygen. It needs precise hormonal balance. It needs a scaffold of muscle tissue to regulate its chemistry. And it needs a brain that is exercised, calmed, and securely connected to others.
So that feeling of brain fog or just getting old, that's not some inevitable decay.
No. It's a dashboard warning light. It's a signal of a missing input. Your check engine light is on. Maybe you're low on light. Maybe you're low on oxygen. Maybe your estrogen or testosterone is low. The solution isn't to just accept it. It's to figure out which input is missing and fix it.
I want to leave our listener with one final thought from this stack today. It comes from Mel Robbins, and it completely reframed how I think about the feeling of envy. She calls it jealousy is a map.
I love this concept. It's so empowering.
We usually feel guilty or ashamed when we feel jealous of someone, their health, their energy, their career. But Mel's point is this. Realize that they are not taking something from you. They are showing you what you actually want.
It's just data.
It's just data. The jealousy is a directional signal. It's your own inner wisdom pointing and saying, hey, go over there. That's what you want. So if you listen to this deep dive and you felt a little twinge of jealousy, hearing about the guy who can last 22 minutes on a stress test or the woman who reversed her own diabetes, good. That's your map. The only question left is, which one of these protocols are you going to use to go get it?
That's the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.